Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we gotta talk about what went down at a Seventh-day Adventist school where 2 students were wounded by a crazy person who has been all hopped up on the propaganda that the Seventh-day Adventists are committing genocide in Gaza because, you know, that's where we're at in the United States of America. But of course, this wouldn't be a California story, this wouldn't be a crime story without the fact that he had a repeat criminal history, was known to be mentally disturbed, so of course, they decided to release him out onto the streets over and over and over again, because what's the worst that could happen? It turns out, the worst almost happened because luckily as of right now these 2 kids that were wounded ended up surviving, and it's about as bad as it gets, and we gotta talk about it. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
The gunman who wounded 2 kindergartners in a senseless attack at a school in Northern California has been identified. Police say 56-year-old Glenn Litton had a long but non-violent criminal past.
So the victims in this particular case are Roman Mendez, age 6, and Elias Wolford, age 5, who were shot in a California kindergarten class by the suspect that we're going to talk about today. Now, obviously, my heart goes out to these kids and to their families, and luckily, although they're in critical condition, it looks like they're going to make a recovery, but it is very unfortunate, obviously, that they had to go through this. And I just want to run through a couple of the barriers that ended up being lifted for this particular criminal that allowed him to get into this position. First and foremost, the guy was a convicted felon. He had many crimes throughout his history, and guess what? He was still able to obtain a firearm and gain access to a school campus.
The fact that they are currently still with us, I think, is a miracle.
Kindergartners Elias Wolford and Roman Mendez were returning from lunch Wednesday when a bullet pierced Elias's lung and stomach, and Roman was struck twice in his chest. New surveillance images show the gunman's movements on campus moments before the attack.
Now look, I don't want to over-exaggerate his criminal history because people will say, oh, it was nonviolent, no big deal, and of course that ignores the mental health history, but to be clear, it appears that many of his convictions were nonviolent, however, they were not victimless. Let's get into them. So Litton's criminal history goes back to the 1990s as a juvenile where he committed a bunch of different crimes, but he also had several other convictions for a number of crimes, including theft, fraud, and forgery in the 90s and early 2000s, Honea said. The Butte County Sheriff's Office has not had any contact with him since 2003 when he was convicted of forgery and fraud charges. Now, he also has counts of cultivating marijuana and petty theft, which eventually rose to felony violations, Ramsey said, and he served his first prison sentence back in 1991. So in 2002, Litton stole the identities of several Butte County residents and charged thousands of dollars to credit cards for things like rent, food, and entertainment. He was arrested in 2002, found in a local wood shop, allegedly buying a disguise, Ramsey said. Officers searched his vehicle, found handcuffs and walkie-talkies. Now this is crucial. They searched his home at the time and found a bulletproof vest and parts of a stun gun, according to Ramsey. They also searched his computer, finding that Litton had searched for guns and explosive. Notes on his computer revealed that Litton may have been planning a mass incident with explosives, but there was no specific target. Honea also confirmed other crimes that Litton was suspected of this year. In March, Litton allegedly stole money from a CVS in Phoenix, where he had been hired, Honea said. On November 12th, Honea said the Chico Police Department received a report that a U-Haul truck was reported stolen. Litton was identified as the suspect and was later arrested in South San Francisco in the stolen pickup truck. Honea said Litton had a forged license under the name Michael Sanders. He was later booked into the San Mateo jail before he was eventually transferred to the San Bernardino County Jail for an outstanding burglary warrant, and then Honea said Litton pled not guilty in San Bernardino, and he was released from jail on November 21st. Again, they had custody of this guy, multiple felony warrants, enough charges, and enough criminal history that a sensible place would have held him pre-trial, not to mention the mental history. but they let him go. So let's be clear, Litton has a decades-long criminal history, but obviously his felony convictions were for forgery and identity theft, and those convictions were secured back in 2003. So it's not surprising, just based on that he would be out on the streets. However, despite the fact that the sheriff's department in this particular case had no contact with him since 2003, that doesn't mean he stopped getting arrested and he stopped committing crimes. And the most recent crime that he was arrested for, and with his lengthy criminal history, not to mention all the sketchy things that they were able to find that they weren't able to press charges over, should have held him behind bars, was that grand larceny auto where he was arrested inside the stolen vehicle. If that was charged as a felony, if that was taken seriously, this guy would have been held in jail pre-trial awaiting those charges. I think that is not too much to ask when a guy has a 30-year criminal history, issues of mental health, but of course the state of California released him on the streets again.
This individual did have some significant mental health issues.
Investigators are reviewing writings found on Litton. He accused the Seventh-day Adventist Church of genocide against Palestinians and identified himself as a ranking member of a group called the International Alliance.
And guess what? This guy who already had mental illnesses, who already had indications that he might be planning some kind of a domestic terrorist attack, got hopped up on the anti-Israeli pro-Gaza propaganda, and he decided that he was going to lash out against a Seventh-day Adventist church because a lot of this propaganda talks about how the Christians in the United States of America are the real ones behind the Israelis, backing them in their genocide campaign against the Gazastanis. Now, of course, there is truth that a lot of evangelicals and other Christian groups in the United States of America are even more supportive of Israel than the Jewish people in the United States of America. But obviously, this rhetoric about genocide and all this other crazy stuff led this guy to lash out and target Christian children as revenge for the supposed genocide in Gaza. Now, of course, when Cenk's nephew was reached for comment on this particular attack, he made sure to mention that resistance against apartheid is oftentimes very imperfect.
That resistance to apartheid is always imperfect, and there are casualties everywhere, which means there are casualties on the Israeli side, and there are going to be casualties on the Palestinian side.
That there are baby settlers.
And there are baby settlers as well. But there are baby settlers as well. There are babies in the settlements.
And then he decided to refer to him as Luffy from One Piece because something about this individual just makes him think of an anime protagonist.
Okay, this is a stupid question. Okay, you can preface it with that. Does he know what One Piece is?
One Piece, like, is that an organization?
No, One Piece is an anime.
اوكي اول شيء بقول لك انه ممكن هذا السؤال يكون شوي اهبل بس بسالك تعرف شو هو ون بيس عمرك سمعت بون بيس
اكيد يعني منذ الطفوله وانا اشاهد ون بيس لوفي
Luffy?
Yeah, he said he's been watching it since he was a kid.
No way.
Yeah,
That's sick. Yes. That's fire. That's so fire. Oh my god. Dude, we think the Houthis, Ansar Allah, is doing what Luffy would do. You should tell him that.
بقول لك حسن انه
Now, obviously, listen, I'm joking about all of those statements from Cenk's nephew. I'm sure he said nothing about this and ignored this completely because it goes against too many of his priors. You have somebody who's hopped up on Palestinian hysteria committing a crime against children. You also have somebody who is released over and over and over again by the American judicial system that he continuously votes to let more and more people out from. It also was in the state of California, so I'm sure he'll avoid this story like the plague because that's what people like him do. And to be 100% clear, I don't think that the Palestinian ideology has much to do about this, because when you have somebody crazy like this, somebody unbalanced, somebody who should be removed from the streets, the fact of the matter is any given cause could have ended up radicalizing him against any given group. And we find out through this that he had no connection to this particular church or any Seventh-day Adventist facility, but for whatever reason, he was obsessed with the idea that the Seventh-day Adventists in particular were somehow dastardly behind this genocide. But again, I will emphasize, to be 100% fair to all the anti-Israeli, pro-Palestinian people out there, I think that this guy could have just as easily been radicalized in any direction. It's just whatever reason, this is what ended up sticking with him. And by the way, he ended up taking his life at the scene. So all these people who said it was so much more merciful to the criminal to let them out over and over and over again, to never hold them pre-trial, guess what? This guy didn't even make it. He ended up losing his life himself at his own hand. And the fact of the matter is, this is a common result of these soft on crime policies. They end up benefiting no one, and that includes the criminal. So in this particular instance, rather than holding this person with a repeat criminal history pre-trial, rather than giving him 3 square meals a day, they decided to release him, even though they knew he had mental conditions and was really not in a right state of mind. And what ended up happening was 2 kids ended up getting wounded, age 5 and 6, and this man ended up taking his own life. So who benefited from this policy? Was this really better? Was this really a wonderful alternative? Did this really successfully aid in the rehabilitation of this individual? I think not. I think that's obvious, but it needs to be emphasized over and over and over again, and at least the overall residents in the state of California seem to have gotten this based on the ballot initiatives that they voted for, but they have to also pressure their legislatures to change these laws and pressure their prosecutors to actually prosecute people and pressure judges to actually hold criminals accountable. Now look, as of right now, there's not a ton of additional information on this particular story, so I think this is a good place to leave it. However, I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. Do you think I'm giving the ideological motivation behind this too much of a free pass, or do you think I'm being pretty fair to the fact that this guy happened to be crazy? What do you think about the judges and everybody that was involved in releasing this guy onto the streets over and over and over again? Again, his most recent arrest was for a grand larceny auto back in November of this year, and that should have been able to hold him so that this attack could have never happened. Again, that's less than a month ago, but I want to know your thoughts all down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about more madness out of California. Till next time.